Okay, Stoner by John Williams. You can tell, as is obvious probably, from the thumbnail, that I'm not actually sitting as per usual. My chair is much too squeaky for me at this time, and just trying to get that finicky kind of futile search for like a comfortable position, I think kind of under cuts what I'm trying to say here. But today I'm just gonna try doing it standing, and if my knees lock up during part of it, I'm just gonna try to do a little bend here, so apologies for that in advance. But yeah, Stoner, John Williams, what a novel. I was coming into this, I heard so many people talk about it, different kind of book type oriented channels on YouTube, and here I heard everybody had a different take on it, and I didn't go into it head first, like digging into the novel, because I don't, obviously that for anybody, I'd imagine that kind of ruins this kind of novel experience of actually reading it. So I wanted to kind of, but I did hear like just kind of like in passing, just people mentioning it on different lists and stuff, and I was expecting it to kind of be. I read like a tiny little tidbit, and I got the impression that it was like kind of a historical novel about this man, William Stoner. And it's set, he's born in 1891, and it concerns his life, and it's told from, it's kind of an omniscient third-person point of view, and it's like, it concerns pretty much everything that goes on in his kind of parochial life as a professor. And he starts out as a farm boy, actually, and in the beginning of the novel, and it's told in such a, apologies, I actually hit that thing nice, but it's told in such a kind of like genial, simple tone. I thought it was quite accessible, actually. Like, I thought this was like something that anybody could pick up, and anyone from like a 15 to 25-year-old, and pretty much be able to kind of indulge in, kind of learn from it, I think. But then again, if you pick it up post that, like a little bit later on life, if you don't read this till your 40s, I think it's just as impactful, because it's like a novel that kind of encompasses so much. But also it's a novel kind of about mediocrity too. It's about, like I said, William Stoner, and he is born into a farming family in, I think, Utah or somewhere out west, and he is this son of the land. He toils the land, and he's works hard. That's one character arc, flat arc throughout, is that Stoner works hard at what he does, whether it's reading to students, doing like his scholarly works. He exerts himself, be it mentally just as much as physically, as we have from his youth. And probably not too much on like the author's own life. John Williams was also from like a western Texas, I think from St. Clair, Texas, and he born in the 20s, I think, and he also had to kind of work on a farm as well, and that kind of, he had a kind of clashing love of like literature, but also now going back to the character of Stoner, Stoner also grows a love for literature, but he actually goes for agricultural something. He goes for something to do with agriculture, given obviously his background, but he wants to kind of do something different. So he tells his parents, he's like, "You guys fine if I go for English literature degree?" And they're like, "A master's of arts," and they're like, "Well, we can't tell you what not to do, what not to." It's something like simple. The way the father said it was like really struck me a little bit, like interesting. Like he was just kind of like not careless, but just like, "Whoa, our son's already grown up, and well, I mean, it would be hard without you, but like doing as not as a farmhand, but if you really want to just pursue literature, you go ahead and do that." And that's what he does. And he's like, so yeah, he ends up going a little bit late to a university, under the dean, well, not the dean, but like the kind of one of his supervisors, professors, not Arthur Lomax, but the older gentleman. He's like kind of, this novel starts out when he's in middle age, a little past middle age, and he basically gives Stoner like, he's very astute and kind of like make sure that like, hey, like he's not pulling any punches with Stoner. He's like, hey, like he really tests him and drills him really hard on literature, and he's like, listen, if you are actually serious about this, you have to know these things. And that's when Stoner starts to begin to take it all seriously. And then about partway through the novel, like right off the bat, maybe not right off the bat, but maybe a couple chapters in, Stoner, after he's like I think like in the midst of his one of his programs. I don't know if it's a MFA or maybe it's just a MA, but I think like right when he's about to finish and he's like starting off to like, because he's essentially he wants to teach, and that's, you know, he wants to teach others. There's this really brilliant little tidbit in the novel where him and his friend, there's Richard Masters, he's a bit older than he, and like is kind of a buddy with Stoner, and is able to kind of, you know, cajole him into you know, these deep conversations that they have at not too much unlike John Williams' own life too, just to kind of bring up that parallel again, because he too probably, you know, it dealt with a lot of interesting kind of conversations, bar conversations between literary people that would, you know, kind of like talk about life more unrestrainedly. So yeah, he talks, and then Masters goes on this long-winded thing where he's like, who are you? Like, who are you? Like, and you, Stoner, like, who are you? Like, are you just a simple son of the soil? Like you pretend, or are you something else? Like, but yeah, I'm not sure the quote I have on hand, but there's, the writing as, even though it's been described as kind of a campus novel in that sense, I think that's a little bit deceptive, because there are some genuine, like, beautiful, well-written, kind of poetic, amidst the kind of prosaic dullness of the everyday. And I think the everyday is kind of a big part of Stoner, but like there's also parts like the love of literature, of language, of the mystery of the mind, and the heart showing up in themselves in a minute. Strange and unexpected combinations of letters and words in the blankest and coldest print, the love of which he hidden as if it were illicit, dangerous, he began to display tentatively at first, then proudly. Continuing on with Stoner here by John Williams. I'm going to try to split this, well, maybe not the video into two parts, but I did just start this part like a day or two after I started the first part, so I guess for explanation and context, this is gonna kind of, the lighting's definitely gonna look different, so just an FYI. So Stoner's, I think I left off with his marriage with Edith. His marriage, Edith is like kind of a very emotionally distant kind of, there's inclinations in the novel where she's kind of sheltered by her parents, and that shows a lot, that she's like very distant, and so they both have a child. They have a point in the marriage where they both finally kind of, for the sake of child, you know, for child rearing, they actually both are intimate, which is a rarity, and she actually has a child that they named Gracie, I believe, and they both, throughout all of Stoner's life, the arc that they both show is that they both start to be very kind of inimical and kind of cold and distant from Stoner. So then he ends up starting an affair with this woman, Catherine, and they both kind of, she's supposed to be a student of his, and she's like pretty bright and promising, and then they both kind of fall for that kind of illicit, kind of classic thing. Again, it's kind of a, yeah, it's got that kind of novel about life and the things that happen in life, and that people go off, and there's like infidelity and stuff, and it's like, it's kind of like almost like a weird staple of like, of kind of the professorship that you have, is that weird student-teacher dynamic, which shows in this novel. And so they have an affair, but they end up cutting it short, and oddly enough, Edith is actually totally fine with it, because she's like, it actually, in a weird way, she's not as upset as he thought she would be. In fact, she's not at all. She's actually, it weirdly makes them closer to each other in this bizarre thing. So, but he ends up cutting it short anyway, for just his career-wise. People or not only suspect, but basically are totally in the know about it, and it's like kind of going around campus, and he decides, you know, for his own, it's, you know, like I said, it's the 30s, right? I think it's the 30s about at this point. He's middle-aged, so it's people are pretty strict about that kind of stuff. So yeah, Stoner continues on his life, and as he grows older, his daughter eventually ends up getting pregnant herself by a boy that ends up getting drafted into the Second World War, and ends up actually dying in battle overseas, in, I think, like fighting the Japan, I think, you know, and that's not, it's kind of almost like a kind of parallel to what happens to Jim Masters in the war too, when Jim Masters dies, and they're both like trying to get the young stoner to sign up. It's like, come on, just sign up to go to this war. It's like you have, I thought that was kind of interesting, kind of similarity there. But yeah, as the novel grows, or as Stoner grows, he gets tireder, and then he's showing himself like there's certain moments when he like shows there's like certain, not partiality, but like certain people, like there's the one student, I thought the scene was kind of interesting where this one student is like clearly didn't do his research, or he didn't like do the do to kind of tasks that was expected of him, and then Stoner's like very assiduous and very demanding that the student is like show is living up to the standard that they have, but very much like he was, like his own peers were. So and then like people around his peers and contemporaries all of a sudden get like really kind of caustic towards Stoner for doing this, and I thought that was kind of interesting because like there wasn't really any big deeper, well there's deeper meanings to it, but like to any of these kind of, I wouldn't say diversions, but they're all kind of a part of a life, that this scholarly kind of life. And even though Stoner himself is kind of like, I don't want to say mediocre, but he definitely isn't like a genius level. He's smart. He's well educated. He's educated, but he's not maybe in that Schopenhauer way of like genius. It's not only being able to hit a mark, which Stoner does very well, but it's being able to hit a target that nobody else can see. I think it's something to that effect. And it's not like he's even unable to hit those targets, but he's more so in his own camp. He's just his own thing. So yeah, he doesn't have any, he's writing his novel, it's more of a, I'm not sure if it's a memoir, but he's he's definitely, astute. But later on in life he starts to kind of get sick, and eventually he starts to suffer kind of different things like cancer. He finds out he actually has cancer of some, I don't know if it's of the bone, kind of ossification, and he's like, well, kind of not blithely, but just definitely with like, kind of stoically kind of accepts his fate, and he starts to kind of tire down later on in life. But I really loved the end scene when he's like walking around his office of where he's like, where it says, he let his fingers rifle through the pages and felt the tingling of those pages as if they were alive. The tingling came through his fingers and coursed through his flesh and bone. He was minutely aware of it, and he waited until it contained him, until the old excitement that felt like terror to him, like terror fixed to him when he lay. The sunlight passing through the window shone upon the page, and he could not see what was written there. The fingers loosened, and the book they had held moved slowly and then swiftly across the still body and fell into the silence of the room. So he basically dies but in a peaceful way, and not in a painful kind of way that was kind of presaged by his having cancer. So he was definitely, it was like thinking about his old days, like himself as a student, like his life, and what is all, it's a story that it is, it's almost like it's not, there's no peaks that go outside anything, like there's no experimental magic realism going on, there's no, Stoner doesn't have these weird dreams or visions of like, he does have profound kind of, clear, like moments of clarity, like eureka moments, he has those, but there's no like moments of like intense genius kind of, masterful kind of anything really. In that sense, there's a strange mediocre beauty to this novel, is that it's just it's earnestly just telling the tale. It's very earnest and forthright. It's just like, hey, here's this guy that lived in the 1890 something to 1960 something, and he lived a decent long life. This is his, this is the kind of a slicing out, I guess, no, I don't want to say slice of life, even though I'm using that term, like a slice, kind of this one singular life of, that's not necessarily any better or greater than anybody else's, but also not as bad as somebody else's, I mean, Stoner had I guess in a way a good life, but it's like, almost in the way that you hear about obituaries, about very kind of just, well-respected, maybe local people, but that weren't really, didn't really rise to anything. It's realistic in that sense. Like, this is a guy that didn't really rise to the top, in a sense that he was definitely not lazy. He worked hard, but he definitely wasn't like super precocious either. Like, he doesn't really go through moments like he does the work required of him, and he's like definitely shows an air of erudition. Definitely, like, he's very knowledgeable of his craft, literature, of teaching, about literature. So, yeah, Stoner. It's a definitely, like, it's been called like a perfect novel by some people, and I'd actually agree. I definitely said this probably on my list of, if you begged me to write a list of, like, if I somehow got to the point of choosing, which is like a very hard thing for me to choose favorites, but I definitely put this on the top 10, but not maybe the top 10, but maybe top 15 or 20. But yeah, definitely has a breath of fresh air for somebody, where for me it was like kind of reading about strictly just darker things, and to read a kind of different or type of things that were more philosophically inclined, whereas this is definitely has like a philosophical undertone to it. I don't think it was manifestly or markedly just singularly just pure philosophy. I think like I said earlier, it's like you can be a young person, like under the age of 20, and read this book, I think. So yeah. And other books in the works, I am actually currently reading Roberto Bolaño, I think it's Bolaño, 2866, which I'm only like 100 and something pages in, but I really love it so far. It's quite, it's like a 900-page book, so it's like definitely probably one of the first books of that size that I've picked up in a while, so just on account of trying to read so many books last year. And I think the main thing I'm trying to drive with it, the character of Archimboldi, I think, the Italian/German elusive writer. I'd love to do a review of it once I'm finished, but I definitely want to take my time with it, and it might be at least like a few more weeks to a month, maybe, at the rate I'm reading it, which is pretty slow. So yeah, I'd let you guys know about that. And also another one of John Williams' books out there that I've heard good things about is Butcher's Crossing. So I have not read that yet. This is the only one that I have read, so I'm really going to be looking into that pretty soon. So thanks for watching.